Part 47. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 470. The Empress stood in front of concubine Anne's Yinghua palace and coldly ordered the nun beside her, "Go and call the door." "Yes, Empress." A nanny responded, rolled up her sleeves, and walked forward to knock on the door. The palace maid's dissatisfied voice soon came from inside, "Who is it? It's not yet dawn, and I'm disturbing the queen. I'm worried that I'll skin you." With the sound of the door opening, the palace maid who poked her head out saw the queen and the palace maid in front of her, and her expression changed. But after just being stunned for a moment, the palace maid regained her composure, casually blessed the queen, and said softly, "I have seen the queen, and I don't know if the queen came here before dawn, but what's the matter?" Empress Yen was extremely sad last night and only rested half an hour ago. The queen glared sullenly at the palace maid in front of her who had no respect for her, and interrupted her coldly. An assassin entered the palace, and someone saw him escaping into Yinghua Palace. I am worried about the safety of concubine Yen, so I specially brought someone to check it out. Your Majesty, please take the trouble. I have been guarding here and haven't seen any assassins. The palace people must have made a mistake. Please come back, Queen. No one can afford to disturb the concubine Yen's dream. The prince died, the Ministry of War's Shangshu mansion was also wiped out, and the queen was no different from a paper tiger with its teeth pulled out. The second prince became the lord of the world, and the phoenix seal was also taken away by the wise concubine. The concubine was arrogant and did not take the queen seriously at all. The queen's face was gloomy, and she motioned to the palace maid beside her to step forward and pull her away. It was only the hands of two nuns that caught the palace maid, and a cold voice came from behind the door, "The emperor passed away, and the queen did not go to mourn. Instead, she came to Yinghua Palace early in the morning to cause trouble. The imperial doctor has said that the emperor has passed away and we, the worthy concubine, are extremely sad and need to rest. If the second prince disturbed his wife's health care, no one could bear the blame." The maid had no respect for the queen at all, and the nun in charge of Yinghua Palace didn't even take the queen seriously. Throw in a few sarcastic remarks and threats. He waved his hand casually behind him and said, "Come here, send the queen back." Although the nun in charge didn't know how the queen came out of the cold palace, she didn't care about it. It doesn't matter if she escapes, the entire palace is under the control of the second prince. Even if she escapes, she won't be able to cause any trouble. Seeing the two imperial guards leading the maids and nuns from Yinghua Palace approaching the queen, Ling Chu frowned and walked out of the darkness with his feet raised. Tisk, the palace of the concubine Yen was not only invaded by assassins, but also escaped. You didn't rush to save people, but you still had the intention to show off your power here. If the second prince finds out that you are refusing to save the virtuous concubine, how many heads do you have enough to chop off? The maids and imperial guards of Yinghua Palace originally stared at Ling Chu, who suddenly appeared with unkind expressions on their faces. But when he turned around and saw the flames rising into the sky in the direction of the inner courtyard, his expression changed greatly. The stewardess turned around in a hurry, took 2 steps, and then suddenly stopped. Turning around, he saw Ling Chu and the empress, with their maids and nuns, about to enter Yinghua Palace. He immediately said to the imperial guards who were about to put out the fire, "Stop them and don't let any of them in." The maids and imperial guards who attended Yinghua Palace didn't know about concubine Yen's secret meeting with Zhao Chuanlin at night, but the stewardess was concubine Yen's nanny and even more of a confidant. Not only did she know all the private affairs of the concubine Yen, but she also knew exactly what happened between the two of them last night. How dare she let the queen and others come in at this moment? Although the two imperial guards and the palace maids felt that it was more important to save the concubine Yen now, they could see the stern look on the steward's face and they did not dare to disobey. He turned around and quickly rushed towards the Empress, intending to stop her and the palace maids first, and then go to save the concubine Xian. With them stopping me, the steward felt relieved, turned around and hurried towards the inner courtyard. Just after running a few steps, a shrill howl came from behind. The grandma was startled and subconsciously turned around. Just when she saw the imperial guard and the palace maid who stepped forward to stop them lying on the ground with pained faces, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her leg. With the scream, the stewardess fell to the ground hard. The emperor's bedroom. The second prince rubbed his numb knees, glanced at the hourglass in the corner, and motioned to the little next to him to help him up. It's about time, it's time for him to go to court. There is no turning back when the bow is fired. Since he has embarked on this path, he will not allow failure. There was no news from Qi Kuagong, and he could not wait any longer. The second prince is thinking about finding a few close ministers and asking them to petition for the appointment of a new king when they go to court. Suddenly there was a rush of footsteps outside the main hall, and a young with an ordinary face hurried in. Second prince, it's not good. An assassin broke into the palace of the concubine Xian, and even escaped. The second prince was thinking intently when his thoughts were suddenly interrupted and he glared at the young angrily. But before he could get angry, his expression suddenly changed when he heard the little eunuch's words. My heart was beating wildly. How could an assassin break into the palace? Could it be that the assassin was from the Minister of War and came specifically to kill his mother and concubine to avenge the people of the minister's mansion? Seeing the crying officials and female family members in the palace looking at him, the second prince took a deep breath and suppressed the panic and suspicion in his heart. I just wanted to say that I would take care of the affairs of Yinghua Palace. Prince Rui stood up with a serious look on his face. How could an assassin sneak into the palace? The weather is dry and water leakage is not a trivial matter, but we must not let the fire spread. Your Highness, let's go. I'll let you go and see who is so bold as to break into the palace and cause trouble. The second prince's lips moved, he wanted to refuse. But I am also worried that the officials will become suspicious. His mother-in-law's palace was invaded by assassins and escaped. It was time to save people. It would be unreasonable for him to stop her. Since he had people spread the news of the emperor's death and the empress dowager fainted, he took the opportunity to take control of Sining Palace. Prince Rui wanted to visit the Queen Mother, but he was repeatedly rejected on the grounds that the Queen Mother needed to rest. Prince Rui was already dissatisfied with him. If he refused at this moment, he might take the opportunity to bring up the matter of visiting the Queen Mother again, and it would be hard for him to object again. After all, Prince Rui is the emperor's uncle. He has not yet ascended the throne, so he still has to take some care of his face. The second prince had no intention of wasting time on this matter. There was another more important reason. If concubine Xian was killed by an assassin or burned to death, his accession to the throne would definitely be affected. Seeing that Prince Rui had already walked out of the hall, the second prince could only glance at the imperial guards in the hall and signal them to guard the emperor's coffin. Then quickly walked out. The second prince kept everyone in the palace in the name of mourning, and the thoughtful ministers guessed his thoughts to some extent. Seeing that he and Prince Rui had left at this moment, all the officials in the palace looked at each other thoughtfully, then turned to the lady kneeling on the other side of the female family members and told them, "There is a storm in the palace, please go and see if you want anything helpful. P.S. The system has been a little convulsive these past 2 days. Yesterday I updated to chapter 457, but the system popped up a prompt for chapter 441, and today another prompt for chapter 442 popped up. If you see it, just ignore it. I have left a message for the editor-in-chief. I'll see if I can find the technical department to cure the system's madness tomorrow. Thanks to Junya, 20220809203547212, Xioxiaba Y and other book friends for their monthly support. Thanks to Ualoyeo, Annexio 365, Fiian, 968,751, Pros. BA, China Fuse, 641,417, Sihide, 854 426, Goat Song and I Story, Chen, Lan Yang, Goat the Story of Songs and Eyes, Scar is Red, Falling Leaves No Autumn. Ad, Xianbin, Trumpet Flowers Under the Scorching Sun, Bao Pengli, Silent Carrot. Dash, Lingzi, White Clouds in the Sky L, 0808292220201007, Why Do We Get Old, All Living Beings, V, Lalunzixi, Sophie I, Shapey Yan, Annexio 365, China Fuse, Colorful Life, FIFA I. AC, Guangdong AZ, CHLWCH, Fiiyan, Yuling, 1609191003194993, It is also supported by the recommendation votes of book friends such as Yuking, 2017071717281687, and 2018032215045487. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 471. After kneeling for such a long time, these ministers actually wished they could follow King Rui. But they came to the palace to mourn, so they couldn't abandon the emperor's coffin and go to Yinghua Palace to watch the fun. Prince Rui is the emperor's uncle, an elder, and has a distinguished status. In the name of preventing the fire from spreading and destroying the palace, he took people to Yinghua Palace to put out the fire. Others cannot criticize him. Concubine Ancienne is the emperor's concubine. They have to avoid suspicion, and the harem is not a place where ministers like them can enter and exit at will. But their wives had no such scruples. Seeing that the second prince and Prince Rui had left, the ministers hurriedly stood up and ordered their wives to go to Yinghua Palace to help. Whether we can save concubine Ancienne is the second. The key is to take advantage of the opportunity to move around and see if we can find out some information. These ladies who came to the palace to mourn were not stupid. They did not understand everything about the undercurrents in the court, but they understood to some extent. At this moment, I also understand what my husband is thinking. After Princess Jianrui, Princess Guangping, and Princess Jing left, Princess Hui, Princess Dingyuan, Madame Nananho and others also followed. The other ladies looked at each other and walked out of the hall in twos and threes. These ladies were walking in a hurry. No matter how much friendship they had with concubine Ancienne on weekdays, their faces were full of worry at the moment. But only they themselves know how many people really care from the bottom of their hearts. Mrs. Kang Anbo is really worried that something will happen to concubine Ancienne. After all, she is her sister. As long as concubine Ancienne is alive and well, the Kang Anbo mansion can legitimately take advantage of her power. Mrs. Kanumber was extremely anxious, but she had knelt for too long, her legs were sore and numb, and she couldn't walk fast at all. She could only urge the two maids supporting her to speed up. If anyone is more anxious than Mrs. Kang Anbo, it is Han Yao. Ever since she seduced the second prince in Dingyuan Palace and did that with her in the cave, she was discovered by everyone. The second prince was forced to accept her as Liangdi. But Han Yao knew that Prince Dingyuan and his wife secretly did not want her to marry the second prince. If she had not tried so hard to persuade the madam to let her enter the second prince's mansion early, she would have died of illness long ago. It's just that although Han Yao entered the second prince's house as she wished, the second prince was annoyed that her seduction was discovered by the emperor, and he lost the royal family's face, so he didn't like her. Han Yao's life in the second prince's mansion was not good. She still tried her best to keep herself humble in front of concubine Ancienne and did everything possible to please the second prince in bed. And when the prince died in a brothel, he gave the second prince a lot of advice, which got him to change his mind. Seeing that the second prince was about to ascend the throne as emperor, Han Yao was trying her best to get him to make her the queen, so that she could trample that Ling Chu and the Dingyuan palace under his feet. At such a critical moment, Han Yao naturally did not want anything to happen to concubine Xian, otherwise her wish to be established as queen would be affected. Han Yao's legs were numb and sore, but she could only grit her teeth and rush to Yinghua Palace eagerly. The ladies all left, and the hall suddenly became quite empty. The minister's legs felt uncomfortable after kneeling for such a long time. He had just stood up and asked the ladies of each family to go to Yinghua Palace to help. Naturally, he was unwilling to kneel down so soon. Three stood together, discussing the assassins. The imperial guards standing in the dark frowned, but seeing that no one touched the emperor's coffin, they couldn't say much. While everyone was discussing, a loud noise suddenly came from the hall. Everyone was shocked. Turning around, everyone was shocked to see the broken coffin in the hall. Yinghua Palace was attacked by an assassin, and the emperor's coffin was smashed inexplicably. Everyone smelled something fishy. The second prince hurried and was about to arrive at Yinghua Palace when suddenly the young shouted in panic from behind. Second prince, it's bad, the emperor's coffin was smashed. The second prince, who was feeling uneasy, heard the word bad and the veins on his forehead swelled. In his rage, he almost turned around and ordered someone to drag the little down and kill him with a cane. Hearing his words behind him, his face changed drastically. Unable to think of rescuing concubine Xian, the second prince turned around and hurried back the way he came. The little shouted loudly, and King Rui, who was walking in front, naturally heard it. He stopped, frowned, and glanced at Yinghua Palace not far away, then immediately turned around and walked back. Prince Rui was already suspicious of the emperor's death, and the second prince repeatedly prevented him from visiting the queen mother. He had somewhat guessed what the second prince was thinking. An assassin entered Yinghua Palace and escaped. He hurried over. He was not concerned about concubine Xian, but just wanted to take the opportunity to find out some information. Hearing that the emperor's coffin was smashed, King Rui immediately sensed that something was unusual. Ling Chu looked through the system and saw the second prince and Prince Rui leaving in a hurry, and raised the corners of his lips. Seeing Ning Chui walking towards the coffin, hidden among the officials, she slowly put the invisible shovel back into the system. The second prince hurriedly turned back and saw the female relatives from various houses who were following them. His expressions were not very good, but he didn't care at all at the moment. Han Yao felt that this was an excellent opportunity. The second prince had no other skills. If she could help, she would have more hope for her to become the queen. Suppressing the joy in her heart, she hurriedly greeted the second prince, "Your Highness, don't worry, I will leave it to you, I will definitely take care of it." Although the second prince didn't like Han Yao very much, seeing her taking the initiative to help, his face softened a little, and he hurriedly explained a few words and rushed to the emperor's palace. Concubine Xian's safety is related to the establishment of the queen, and Han Yao's rush to Yinghua Palace has never been more urgent. The ladies who were following behind also knew that the emperor's coffin had been smashed, and they were wondering whether they should follow the second prince and Prince Rui back to the emperor's palace. Princess Jian Rui and several noble ladies looked at each other and continued to rush to Yinghua Palace. They hesitated for a moment and then followed. Han Yao hurried all the way, and when she arrived at Yinghua Palace, she saw that the gate was open, and there was no nun or maid guarding the door. "I didn't think much about it, I just thought they were all going to put out the fire." When she crossed the threshold and walked a few steps in, she saw the imperial guards and palace maids lying on the ground, and her expression changed. Although it was strange that these people were unconscious here, Han Yao was worried about concubine Xian's life, so she only took a quick glance and walked to the inner courtyard. The mammy who was unconscious on the ground was about to wake up. When she saw Han Yao, she was overjoyed and said, "Han Liangdi, hurry up and save the Empress." As soon as the words came out of her mouth, the mama's face suddenly changed when she saw Princess Rui and others who came after them. "Han Liangdi, hurry, stop them quickly, don't let them in." Princess Rui was feeling that what happened today was too strange and wanted to take the opportunity to find out the news. At this moment, she saw that the stewardess of Yinghua Palace had such an abnormal attitude. How could she get what she wanted? Immediately scolded with a straight face and the attitude of a princess, "Mommy, you are so confused. There is a leak in the palace of the concubine Xian. We kindly came to help put out the fire, but you actually want to stop it. Could it be that the leak in Yinghua Palace was caused by you?" The nanny was so anxious that she almost vomited blood when she saw Han Yao looking at her suspiciously. The votes are coming. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 472. Chapter 460 Kicked Away. Originally, there was a breach in Yinghua Palace, and Han Yao thought it was the work of assassins. But after listening to Princess Rui's words, she also doubted in her heart, could it be that it was the nanny's hand that caused her leg to be broken? Just when he caught sight of the angry look in Mammy's eyes, he realized that this Mammy was concubine Xian's nanny, and even more so her confidant. She has always been the most protective of the virtuous concubine, and it is logically impossible for her to set fire to Yinghua Palace. But she brought people to put out the fire. This nun should be happy, so why should she stop them? Han Yao was worried about concubine Xian's life, so many thoughts flashed through her mind, instantly turning her mind into a mess. Seeing the fire still burning in the inner courtyard, how could he still think about the truth of the matter? He picked up his skirt and ran towards the inner courtyard. Grandma was extremely angry when she saw that Han Yao not only ignored her words, but also suspected that she was the one who set the fire. She was even more anxious when she saw Princess Rui leading a large group of people past her and following her towards the inner courtyard. "Han Liangdi, Han Liangdi." The stewardess shouted angrily at Han Yao's back, trying to tell her to stop Princess Rui and the others. But Han Yao wanted to save concubine and Xian. When she heard her cry, instead of stopping, she ran faster and faster. The nanny in charge almost died of anger. This Han Yao is really more successful than failed. Originally, concubine Xian was not afraid of having an affair even if the queen and the others caught her. After all, her life was in the hands of the second prince. She wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. However, Han Yao brought so many people here, how could he keep it a secret? She was not trying to save concubine and Xian, but because she didn't want to die quickly enough. The nanny in charge was so anxious that she wanted to stop him. But one of her legs was broken by Ling Chu, and it hurt terribly when she moved. There is not even a single person who can help here. Concubine and Xian became powerful and had many people waiting in her palace. But in order to prevent others from knowing about concubine and Xian's affair with Zhao Chuanlin, all the servants in attendance were ordered by the steward to stay in the servants' room and were not allowed to move around. As a result, the sky are now unable to respond, and the earth are ineffective. Mammy was shocked and angry, and vomited a mouthful of blood. The severe pain of her broken leg made her want to faint. But thinking that concubine and Xian and the deputy commander named Zhao were still in the room, she had to swallow the sweet taste in her throat. Raised his hand and slapped the unconscious palace maid on the ground hard. After a few slaps, the maid woke up. But with a broken leg, it was difficult to even move, let alone stop Princess Rui and the others. The remaining two imperial guards not only had their legs broken by Ling Chu, but also had their martial arts skills disabled by the people sent by Ning Chui, so they had no hope at all. The stewardess was so desperate that she could only lie down on the ground and crawl towards the inner courtyard dragging her broken leg. The queen and her people stood at the door of concubine Xian's bedroom, looking at Ling Chu in confusion. Why doesn't the princess let me in? The queen's brows can kill flies. Ling Chu clearly asked her to catch the rapist, but when she got to the door, she was still not allowed in. Ling Chu glanced at her lightly and said, "My dear, don't worry, the time has not come yet." The queen knew that she was powerless now, and was afraid of missing the opportunity to catch the traitor. How could she not be anxious? If the second prince comes with someone, I can't fight him. Ling Chu was very calm. Don't worry, the second prince is too busy to take care of himself right now and can't come. The queen opened and closed her mouth. Although she didn't know what Ling Chu was waiting for, she had no choice but to believe her now. You can only press down your anxiety and wait patiently. Fortunately, she didn't wait long before she heard the sound of hurried footsteps running towards her from far away. The queen looked a little surprised and uncertain, not knowing who was coming. Subconsciously, he glanced at Ling Chu and saw that there was no change in her expression, so he had to calm down. Just as he was guessing the identity of the person coming, he didn't expect to hear many chaotic footsteps soon after. The queen suddenly tightened her lips. Ling Chu suddenly smiled and turned to face the way he came from. The show can finally begin. The queen and the people around her also followed her and looked over. When they saw Han Yao coming over panting, their hearts sank at the same time. However, when she saw Princess Rui and a large group of ladies following closely behind, the queen's eyes suddenly shone brightly. She finally understood Ling Chu's intention. Han Yao hurried over and was a little surprised to see the queen. When his eyes reached Ling Chu, his pupils shrank suddenly. Why are you here? This obviously followed the emperor out of the capital. Why did he appear so suddenly? She didn't hear the news about her return to Beijing, and thought she died outside. This is really tough. Han Yao was still glaring at Ling Chu, and Princess Rui and others who arrived later looked surprised when they saw the queen with disheveled hair and a disheveled appearance. Although they were surprised that the queen was not well groomed, they all thought that she had heard that something happened in concubine Xian's palace and was in a hurry and did not bother to dress up. Everyone knew that after the death of the prince, the queen could not bear the shock and was ill in bed, so they all tacitly agreed not to mention it more. They all expressed their blessings. My wife has met the queen. The queen used to attach great importance to etiquette, but at this moment, she just wanted to let that concubine Xian die. Hands off the foreign women without even waiting for them to finish their salutes. Mrs. Kang Anbo had little respect for the queen because she was concubine Xian's sister. He bent his knees casually, straightened his body immediately, and couldn't wait to speak. When did the queen come here? Do you know how concubine Xian is doing now? Although Mrs. Kang Anbo found out that it was the side hall that escaped, she felt a little relieved. But I didn't see concubine Xian, and I wondered if she had been killed by an assassin. Facing Mrs. Kang's aggressive words, the queen was so angry that her chest felt tight. But she held back her anger and said coldly, I heard that assassins entered Yinghua Palace and escaped, so I just arrived. As for concubine Xian, I didn't see it. I was planning to go into her bedroom to take a look. Look, here you are. Since everyone is worried about concubine Xian's life, let's go in together. There was such a big commotion in Yinghua Palace, and concubine Xian didn't even show up. Mrs. Kang Anbo was already very worried. I have nothing against the queen. Just about to knock on the door in person. A palace maid in the distance ran over with sweat on her face and said, Madam, stop. Hearing the familiar shout, Mrs. Ankang paused. The visitor is Chunlin, concubine Xian's personal maid. Even though concubine Xian sent away all the people waiting around her last night, she was still determined to seduce Zhao Chuanlin, and someone had to prepare hot water for her afterwards. Since Chunlin was a confidant, he kept her on watch all night. It was just concubine and Xian's nanny who was worried, so she sent Chunlin off to rest. Chunlin couldn't bear to disobey the nanny's order and had to leave. But she didn't expect that the queen had lost her power and would dare to bring people to Yinghua Palace. Fortunately, she arrived in time, and concubine and Xian's affairs had not been discovered yet. Ling Chu was being pulled by Princess Dingyuan to talk when he saw the palace maid rushing over with a group of people in a menacing manner. Immediately waved his hand to summon a small hammer. Chunlin saw her intention and shouted anxiously, "Han Liangdi, stop her quickly." Han Yao was quietly approaching Ling Chu, hoping to eavesdrop on the emperor's news from her conversation with Princess Dingyuan. Hearing Chunlin's words, she pushed fiercely with both hands. Ling Chu smiled sarcastically and instead of hiding, he raised his foot. All the ladies watched helplessly as she kicked Han Yao away. Thanks to Ziamamel, 13119213222849, Lu Ji Xinu and other book friends for their monthly support. Thanks to E550, 968,751, no commitment required, 0808292220201007, Panax Nodo Ginseng. DB, Ixixi, red leaves fluttering. E, Fenkishan, Zizuha, Wuhu dash, Yanking, Moran Karad. Dash, 170117155432401, 1609191003194993, V, Prose. BA, I, Silly, Harsh, 20231008623025. Falling Leaves No Autumn. Ad, Crystal at Diamond, 968,751, Morning Glory Under the Scorching Sun, Chen, Happy Baby, Lingzi, Bayo Pengli, White Clouds in the Sky L, Sunshine, CHLWCH, Silent Blessing, Xianbin, All Living Things, 202007061304253228, 2021062201257196, 0808292220201007, Yuologo Yao Yao, Lan Yang, Schweer, 2023052915572930, Deer's Heart Whisper, 201803221504548777, Yang Yang, Ixixi, Why We Grow Old, 2017071717281687 and other book friends recommend and vote for support. Thanks to the book friends who support Hongxiu. Thanks to the book friends who support Hongxiu. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 473. Boom. The system absorbed a large amount of jade in the water curtain cave, and Ling Chu's health was much better than before. In the past, she was somewhat concerned about the feelings of King Dingyuan and his wife towards Han Yao, and she tolerated her again and again. But she showed no mercy with this kick. Han Yao was kicked and hit the ground heavily. Looking at Han Yao who passed out, there was a moment of silence. Although Han Yao is the concubine of the second prince's mansion, she has no friendship with the ladies present. Everyone saw that Princess Dingyuan looked unhappy and knew that she was angry with Han Yao before attacking Ling Chu. Of course no one would offend the noble Princess Dingyuan for a little Liangdi. The queen doesn't even care about Han Yao's life or death. Concubine and Xian has always been favored. Although Yinghua Palace is not as good as Cunning Palace where the queen lives, the layout and luxury inside are no worse than Cunning Palace. Concubine and Xian's bedroom is not small. Although the bedroom door was smashed open, the bed inside could not be seen from the doorway. In the middle is an extremely luxurious octave rosewood screen, which just blocks the bed in the room. Chunlin was shocked and angry. She didn't expect that Ling Chu would dare to smash open concubine and Xian's bedroom in front of everyone. Seeing that the queen was about to rush in, she even rushed over to block the door regardless of her dignity. Empress, the emperor passed away, and we, the Empress, are extremely sad. The imperial doctor has told us to take a rest. Please leave and don't disturb our concubine's rest, otherwise, no one will be able to bear the blame of the second prince. The prince died, and the queen was already in unbearable grief. People in Yinghua Palace were afraid that she would not be sad enough, so they repeatedly used the second prince to threaten her. The queen couldn't bear it any longer. She raised her hand and slapped Chunlin the face. "You are so impudent, you are a cheap maid, but you dare to stop me." After slapping Chunlin herself, the queen told the nanny beside her with a stern face, "Someone, drag this cheap maid down and kill her with a cane." The queen's people just wanted to step forward and drag him away. Chunlin was afraid that the queen would break into the bedroom, so she immediately winked at the person she brought. People from Yinghua Palace immediately rushed forward and blocked the door. One side wants to advance, the other side wants to block it. The two parties, who were already hostile, quickly got into action during the push and pull. The queen has a distinguished status, and the people around her also have high status in the palace. But since the death of the prince, the people in Cunning Palace have fallen from heaven into hell. Having been suppressed overtly and covertly by the maids of Yinghua Palace, I had already accumulated a lot of resentment. Now that I finally found an opportunity, I would naturally not show mercy. The people in Yinghua Palace relied on concubine and Xian's influence and did not pay attention to the queen's people. Now that they are bullying me, I am naturally annoyed. For a time, the two sides were fighting fiercely. Mrs. Kang Anbo didn't know whether concubine and Xian was dead or alive. She wanted to go into the bedroom to check, but was blocked by both parties at the door, and she jumped anxiously. All the ladies looked at each other, whether they wanted to help or not. Ling Chu took one look at the chaotic scene, without saying a word, summoned the small hammer again, and smashed it neatly against the exquisite and luxurious rosewood screen. As the sound of a sudden collapse came, everyone turned their heads and looked into the dormitory. Without the screen, everyone's eyes fell on the large bed through the half-draped exquisite bead curtain. Chunlin's face turned pale, and it was already too late to stop him. Ling Chu hammered each one, knocking them all over. Seeing the two people naked and entangled together on the bed, the sounds of gasping in disbelief were mixed with exclamations one after another. "Oh my God, who is that?" After Zhao Chuanlin was knocked unconscious, he lay on concubine and Xian's body, covering his face so that no one recognized him for a while. Mrs. Canumber looked at the two people on the bed, her eyes darkened for a while. Ever since she heard that assassins broke into Yinghua Palace, she thought about countless possibilities such as concubine and Xian being injured, killed, or burned to death. I just never thought that she was having an affair with someone else. I don't know if she was too shocked. When someone asked who that person was, she blurted out, "That is the emperor." As soon as the words left her mouth, Mrs. Canumber realized that she was angry. The queen sneered, "What a wonderful Mrs. Kang Anbo. Who knows that the emperor has passed away? This ability of lying with open eyes really impresses me." Mrs. Kang's face turned pale, pale. She wanted to say that concubine and Xian must have been forced by the man, but her eyes saw concubine and Xian's hands and feet entangled with the man, and the on her face that had not yet dissipated. Not exported. Even if she said it, no one would believe it. Those ladies are not stupid either. They are all married people. Whether they are forced or voluntary, you can tell at a glance. Mrs. Kang Anbo was at a loss and didn't know how to deal with the aftermath. To avoid suspicion, the ladies did not enter the dormitory. The queen had no worries. The prince was dead and she didn't want to live. Why would you care if you see your foreign man's body? She just wanted that concubine and Xian to die. She walked straight to the bed. He even took it upon himself to break off the man's head and said, "Vice Commander Zhao." Hearing the sound of the queen gnashing her teeth, the lady couldn't help but turned her head subconsciously and saw Zhao Chuanlin's face clearly. "Someone, Please separate this pair from me. Drowningly, Zhao Chuanlin heard the noise and opened his eyes in a daze. When he saw the queen in front of him and the palace maid next to him, his expression changed drastically. Before Zhao Chuanlin could react, the two nuns stepped forward, grabbed his arms and pulled him hard. Zhao Chuanlin subconsciously wanted to resist, but he was powerless. Before she fell into coma, the two of them were exercising. At this moment, Zhao Chuanlin was pulled away from concubine Xian's body. Maybe feeling the emptiness, she instinctively groaned and said softly, "Brother Zhao, don't go." The queen's face was gloomy. She walked to the bed in 2 steps, raised her hand and slapped concubine Xian the face. Snapped. Concubine Xian suddenly opened her eyes from the wave of love. "Who dares to hit me?" The queen sneered and slapped her again. "Bitch, you are really despicable. The emperor just passed away, and you couldn't wait to steal someone." Concubine Xian was completely awakened by 2 slaps in the face, staring at the queen, wishing to eat her alive. Seeing the woman he loved being beaten, Zhao Chuanlin's eyes were splitting and he wanted to kill the queen. But he was completely powerless and was pinned to the ground by 2 palace maids, unable to move. "Enmaying, you are so brave, you dare to have a secret affair with Vice Commander Zhao under the emperor's nose. The emperor is really blind, so he allowed you to be favored in the harem. I believe that Xiao Nanmu and Huayan were both born to you secretly. If you dare to confuse the royal bloodline, I will not treat you lightly." Concubine Xian suddenly tightened the brocade quilt with both hands and glared at the queen. "What a cruel heart. I didn't expect that as the master of the first palace, you would have such despicable methods. The prince obviously died in a brothel, so forget it because you have wronged me many times. Now you dare to use tricks to frame me, and also slander the identities of His Highness the Second Highness and Princess Huayan. You are so despicable and shameless, but you are worthy of the emperor and the ancestors of the Xiao family." Xi'an Book Club, 7693258897. Thanks to AskPod, 2017052423531469 and other book friends for their monthly support. Thanks to Ni Chang 916, Panax Noto Ginseng. DB, Happy Life, Colorful Life, 1402121840214228, SC Shahan, Love Has Passed Away, Woohoo-V. Falling Leaves No Autumn. Ad, Schwerer, Scarred, Silent Blessings, 13119213222849, Xianbin, Lingzi, Crystal at Diamond, Fei, China Fuzii, Prose. Ba, E, Silly Bayan, Red Leaves Gone with the Wind, Lalang Zixi, Yunyun Zongshen, 2020070613042538, Feiyan, The End of the World, Fei. AC, CHLWCH, Walasali, Why We Grow Old, etc. are recommended and supported by book friends. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 474. Chapter 462 Grief. Concubine Xian's palace was in trouble, and Princess Rui wanted to bring a group of ladies to help. Princess Dingyuan couldn't refuse. She was so happy when she saw Ling Chu suddenly appearing in the palace. But he didn't expect to see the queen and her men coming to catch him. Ling Chu was an unmarried girl after all, and the princess wanted to keep her far away. But the other ladies didn't leave, so it was hard for her to take Ling Chu back at this time. The mother and daughter could only stand outside the bedroom with a group of ladies. Although everyone around her was whispering, in order to let everyone know that she was framed by the queen, concubine Xian suppressed everyone's comments with a few words of defense. After Ling Chu glanced at the ladies with different expressions, he quietly glanced at the Jin Yiwei who was hiding in the dark, pretending to be a young eunuch. The other party nodded, turned, and left. He quickly turned around and carried a woman in his hand. She was the steward of Yinghua Palace, Grandma Cao, and the nanny of concubine Ancienne. When Grandma Cao saw the group of ladies gathered around the door, she knew that concubine Ancienne's affair had been exposed, and her expression suddenly turned gloomy. Ling Chu took advantage of the Jinyi guard to carry Nanny Cao into the bedroom and quietly cast a mantra on her body. Any person who has been given a mantra talisman will reveal all the secrets in his heart. Concubine Ancienne and Zhao Chuanlin were seen lying naked on the bed by so many ladies and maids, and there was also the confession of Grandma Cao. No matter how much concubine Ancienne tried to quibble, she could not hide their adultery. Ling Chu had no intention of staying any longer, so he found an excuse to change his clothes and left. The emperor's bedroom. More than a dozen imperial guards blocked the broken coffin behind them. The sword in the leader's hand was pointed at Ning Chui. "Master Ning, you are so brave. It doesn't count that you colluded with the third prince to kill the emperor. You don't even have a corpse, let it go." The crying Begwin was startled by the sound of smashing the coffin. At this moment, he was surprised to see Ning Chui appear. But no one dared to speak. Since the death of the crown prince, the domineering second prince has become uncharacteristically cruel and ruthless. First, the powerful minister of the Ministry of War was imprisoned on the charge of rebellion. Within a few days, news came out that he committed suicide in prison out of fear of crime. Just one day later, a fire broke out in the Ministry of War's Shangshu mansion, killing more than 100 people, but not a single one survived. Although the second prince received a confession from the Shangshu mansion, the Shangshu mansion set fire to himself because the master had rebelled and knew that he would not be able to escape the death penalty. Although no one doubted this on the surface, many courtiers had an idea in mind. It's just that everyone has not yet recovered from the shock of the extermination of the Shangshu mansion. They are also worried about the fact that the Duke of Ningguo colluded with the three princes to usurp the throne and killed the emperor. In the name of eradicating rebellious ministers and traitors, the second prince imprisoned everyone from top to bottom in Ningguo's mansion. The third prince was also imprisoned in the third prince's mansion. He did not know whether he was alive or dead. The second prince acted unscrupulously, and many officials in the court were afraid of him. Even if there were officials in the main hall who did not believe that Duke Ning would rebel, they would not dare to speak out in defense of Ning Chui. No one spoke, but Kang Anbo stood up. But he did not speak for Ning Chui. "Ningguo Gongfu has always been loyal to the emperor, but I didn't expect that in this generation, a traitor like you would appear. Do you think that by killing the emperor, you can succeed in your attempt to usurp the throne?" Ning Chui glanced at the sarcastic Kang Anbo coldly, and interrupted him directly. "The emperor is still alive and well, but you keep saying that the emperor is dead. Cursing the emperor so blatantly, what is Kang Anbo's intention? The emperor is not dead?" The officials in the palace were stunned, and their eyes couldn't help but turn to the position of the coffin. The coffin was smashed, and the body inside was exposed. Everyone only saw the bright yellow dragon robe on the body. But there were more than a dozen forbidden soldiers blocking his face, and his face could not be seen. Standing in doubt, Kang Anbo sneered, "The emperor is not dead? Do you think that the Second Highness and all the officials are blind?" Ning Chui frowned and ignored Kang Anbo's words. Turning his head to look at the coffin, he just stepped forward when the second prince's sinister voice sounded behind him. "Come here, catch Master Ning, this rebellious minister and traitor." As soon as the second prince's order was given, a group of forbidden soldiers armed with bows and arrows rushed in from the entrance and window of the hall. Prince Rui hurried over and frowned, "Your Highness, wait a minute." The second prince looked at Prince Rui with a gloomy face. "I wonder what your uncle meant by stopping him." Prince Rui looked directly at the second prince's face. "Your Highness, I seem to have just heard that Lord Ning said that the emperor is not dead." The second prince's heart tightened. "Uncle, how can you believe such ridiculous words?" Although His Highness also hopes that my father is still alive, there is no resurrection after death. Ning Chui ignored the soldiers holding bows and arrows pointing at him, and only said quietly, "May I ask King Rui, have you seen the emperor's body?" Prince Rui frowned. Although he was suspicious of the emperor's death, he really hadn't seen his body. When he received the news and hurried to the palace, concubine Ancienne was holding the emperor's body. Sometimes she cries in grief, sometimes she mutters to herself. If anyone comes near, she will cry and shout. According to the imperial doctor, concubine Ancienne couldn't bear the shock of the emperor's death, so she didn't allow anyone to get close to her. If I am stimulated again, I am afraid that I will go crazy with gain and loss. Wang Rui saw that concubine Ancienne was really crazy and was not allowed to get close to her. He only took a quick look and found out that the Queen Mother had fainted, so he hurried to Sinning Palace. Before the Queen Mother regained consciousness, the second prince came to him again looking embarrassed. It was said that the emperor's death was too sudden, and all the officials were panic-stricken, so they could only ask him to come forward to shock him. Prince Rui didn't want to see the country shake, so he had to comfort the courtiers and help the second prince handle the government affairs. Later, the emperor had been buried in the coffin. The second prince glanced at Prince Rui's thoughtful face, turned around and looked at Ning Chui, sneering, "You said the emperor is still alive, then tell me who is in the coffin." Ning Chui looked directly at him, "That's a good question. The emperor is obviously not dead, but I also want to know who died and still wanted to be the father of His Highness. You." Seeing that the second prince looked like he wanted to chop Ning Chui with a knife, Prince Rui immediately walked towards the coffin. The dozen or so imperial guards blocking the coffin looked at the second prince in embarrassment. All the officials in the palace looked at each other in confusion. Just when everyone thought that the second prince would let the imperial army stop Prince Rui, they saw him waving his hand to signal them to get out of the way. Wang Rui didn't show any emotion on his face, but his heart sank. Without the obstruction of the imperial guards, his sight fell straight to the ground. The heavy coffin was smashed into large and small pieces, and a body dressed in a bright yellow dragon robe lay on it. Everyone's eyes fell on the corpse's face. By chance, a piece of wood blocked his face. Wang Rui stepped forward heavily and squatted down. "Slowly stretch out your hand." Every official in the palace stared at Prince Rui's movements for a moment, and some people held their breath unknowingly. No one can explain how he feels at this moment. He hopes that the emperor is still alive, but also feels that the emperor's mourning hall has been built. This is too ridiculous. As the wood pieces were slowly opened, King Rui closed his eyes sadly when he saw the familiar dragon's face. "Thank you for why you are getting older, Ixixi, happy life, sunflower jelly, woohoo dash, Panax noto ginseng. DB, E550, 1402121840214228, Chen, Wabk. 123, white clouds in the sky L, red leaves fluttering. E, silly and harsh AI, Chen, silently carried. Dash, Fei Wenli, Yunyun all living things, Lingzi, why do you grow old, Eden of the East, Xianbin, 20230521742110, Daoyo. EB, CHLWCH, Lalang Zixi, .v, Crystal at Diamond, Xiahonki. Supported by recommendation votes from book friends such as DC, Xiangyang Xianko, and Ixixi. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 475. Chapter 463, Recognizing Dad at Random. Your Majesty. Rui Yang originally had a glimmer of hope in his heart after hearing Ning Chui's words. Seeing this familiar face made me feel unbearably sad. Ning Chui looked at the corpse intently, frowning. Lift your feet and walk forward. The imperial guards all around looked at the second prince and saw that he had no intention of stopping him, so they could only surround him without moving. Ning Chui squatted down next to King Rui, pulled the corpse's head over with his hands, and looked at it carefully. Prince Rui's lips moved twice, and the words "Don't be rude to the emperor" came to his lips. He didn't know what he thought of, and he swallowed it slowly. Ning Chui frowned more and more. He originally thought that the corpse's face looked exactly like the emperor's because it was wearing a human skin mask. But he checked around and couldn't find it. After thinking about it, he rubbed his hands vigorously on the corpse's face, and then looked down at his fingers. They were all clean, and there was obviously no makeup on their faces. Prince Rui kept watching his movements and saw his brows furrowed. Obviously, things were different from what he expected. Although the second prince said that Duke Ningguo had rebelled and killed the emperor, he privately did not believe it. Ning Qiagong and his son were not crazy. How could they kill the emperor in order to support the third prince who had a disabled leg? Besides, he probably knew a thing or two about Ning Chui's life experience. He was able to rise to the rank of commander of the Imperial Guard at such a young age by his own abilities, which shows that he is not a fool. Of course he knew that killing the emperor would not do him any good. The second prince's rhetoric simply cannot withstand careful scrutiny. Prince Rui thought of the recent undercurrents in the court. Rather than Ning Chui's rebellion, he believed that the second prince secretly attacked the emperor in order to compete for the throne. Although throughout the ages, it is not uncommon for the heavenly family to harm each other for the sake of the dragon chair. But Prince Rui still didn't want the Chongzhou dynasty to fall into the hands of the second prince. He glanced at Ning Chui and saw his hand inspecting the body. He hesitated for a moment and slowly stood up. "Your Highness, could you please ask Dr. Chen to come over? Prince Rui has a distinguished status and has accompanied the emperor on the battlefield before. Even if he is not wearing the prince's patchwork clothes at this moment, but is just wearing plain clothes, standing quietly with his hands behind his hands, his aura cannot be underestimated." Although King Rui didn't say it explicitly, the fact that he asked Imperial Physician Chen to come over showed that he believed in what that Ning Chui said. The second prince is angry, but he has not yet sat on the dragon chair. It would be unwise to fall out with Prince Rui at this moment. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the man on the side nodding towards him invisibly. The second prince suppressed his anger, put on a sad expression, and sighed deeply. "Uncle, my nephew understands what you are thinking. I don't want to believe that my father is no longer alive. But, that's all." The second prince looked sorrowful and couldn't bear to mention it again. He turned around and told the following him, "Go and ask Imperial Physician Chen to come over." "Yes, Your Highness." Just as the turned around and took 2 steps, the second prince stopped him again. "Except for Imperial Physician Chen, let's see which other Imperial physicians are on duty and call them all over." Prince Rui glanced at him lightly. Although he said nothing, his brows furrowed slightly. He asked the second prince to invite Dr. Chen, also with the intention of testing him. If he refuses, it means there is something fishy about the corpse. But his reaction, could it be that the corpse was really the emperor? King Rui lowered his eyes and saw that Ning Chui was still checking. He hesitated for a moment, but finally did not speak. Knowing that it was the second prince who summoned him, Dr. Chen came very quickly. In addition to him, 7 or 8 other imperial doctors who were still on duty at the imperial hospital also followed. Every imperial doctor is carrying a medicine box in his hand. His steps are eager, but his heart is uneasy. Since the prince passed away, the emperor passed away, the third prince was imprisoned and his life and death were not known, and people in the court were in panic. These imperial doctors also lived in fear every day. "I was afraid that if I made a mistake, I would be killed by the second prince. Seeing the next to the second prince coming to summon him, he was even more frightened. No one wanted to come, but they had to come. I thought it was because the second prince was feeling unwell, but he didn't expect to call them. However, Prince Rui wanted them to check whether the body was disguised with special drugs. Seeing that all the imperial doctors were standing still, I knew that they were afraid of the second prince. Although he didn't want to embarrass these imperial doctors, Prince Rui still darkened his face, and his cold voice contained a pressure that could not be ignored. Why, is it that my words don't work? Or are you imperial doctors just quacks, even with such a little bit of pressure? Can't do small things. All the imperial doctors were complaining. Although they had no contact with the government, they could see that King Rui was suspicious of the second prince. They have no intention of wading into this muddy water. The emperor is dead and the prince is gone. The second prince is undoubtedly the next emperor. If they listen to King Rui and act, they will offend the second prince. But if they reject King Rui, their days as an imperial doctor will be over. No matter what you do, it is wrong. The second prince was quite satisfied with the reaction of these imperial doctors. But he kept a straight face and said, "The hospital doesn't support food. If you can't do such a small thing well, why don't you go home as soon as possible and entertain your grandchildren?" The second prince spoke, and these imperial doctors finally obeyed and began to take action. Although I don't know what kind of medicine the second prince sold in the gourd, they acted according to the order. No matter what the consequences were, they cannot be blamed. Ning Chui stood up and moved away. Several doctors worked together, took out the things they needed from their medicine boxes, and applied them to the corpse. Very quickly, everything was checked from the hair, face, facial features, to the neck, chest, hands, and feet. Physician Chen took a deep breath, stood up, and cupped his hands. "Back to your highness, your majesty, I and others have examined it. This body has not been touched. It is indeed the emperor." Prince Rui sighed secretly and looked at Ning Chui silently. Actually, Dr. Chen knew the result without having to tell him. He had just been standing nearby, watching the imperial doctors examining him. Ning Chui said nothing, looking at the corpse with doubts in his eyes. He believed Ling Chu's words that the emperor was not dead. But if the emperor is still alive, then who is this body? Everyone in the court knew that the Queen Mother had never given birth to twins. Are there really people in this world who are not even remotely related by blood but look exactly the same? Seeing that Ning Chui was silent, Kang Anbo sneered and said, "Master Ning, the second prince is not blind. Could he not recognize whether the person who died was his father?" Before Kang Anbo finished speaking, a mocking female voice came from outside the palace door. "Kang Anbo is not right. Although the second prince is not blind, his eyesight is not very good. This corpse is really not his father." There was silence in the hall for a moment, and all the officials turned their heads. Who is so bold as to dare to ridicule the second prince in front of so many people? The second prince's veins popped out and he glared at Ling Chu angrily. "I wonder what Princess Jiashan means by this." Ling Chu looked directly at the second prince, and crossed the threshold with a half smile but not a smile. "That's the literal meaning. Your Highness, you recognize your father in such a random way. How can you make concubine and Xian and Vice Commander Zhao embarrassed?" Thanks woohoo dash, 1402121840214228, Happy Baby, Walasali, Neon Clothes 916, Zizuha, Pros. BA, Why We Grow Old, I, Silly and Harsh AI, Chen, Morning Glory Under the Scorching Sun, Eden of the East, Ice, Sunshine. V, Red Leaves Floating. E, Lalang Zixi, Xianbin, CHLWCH, All Living Beings, The Wind of the Blue Planet, 2023060110025730, China Fuse, Little Red Flag. DC, Dream #Reality, 2018032215045487 and other book friends recommended vote support. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 476. Chapter 464 contains a lot of information. Everyone in the palace stared wide-eyed. What Princess Jiashan said is very informative. Some people were feeling dizzy, wondering over and over in their minds, whether that corpse was the emperor or not. Those who were quick-thinking asked each other with their eyes. Princess Jiashan said that the second prince mistakenly recognized his father, and they could understand when it came to concubine Xian. But what does this have to do with Vice Commander Zhao? Could it be that? Then Zhao Chuanlin is the second prince's father? Doesn't that mean that concubine Xian had an affair with Vice Commander Zhao and gave birth to a second prince? God, the second prince is not the emperor's son. Terrible. Those people who were quick-thinking shuddered and suppressed the thought in a panic. Despite being forced by the second prince's cruelty, no one dared to speak. But some people couldn't help but peek at him intentionally or unintentionally. Ning Chui watched Ling Chu ignore the rows of imperial soldiers holding bows and arrows and slowly walk from outside the palace. He frowned and asked her with his eyes, "Didn't you agree to let her stay with concubine Xian? Why put yourself in danger?" Ling Chu knew that Ning Chui was worried about her safety, but she still had to come. In front of so many people, she said nothing and only smiled comfortingly at Ning Chui. Watching their flirting, King Rui realized that the relationship between the two was probably unusual. Just thinking about what Ling Chu had just said, his brows furrowed. The imperial guards guarding outside the palace saw the second prince staring at them dissatisfied, apparently blaming them for not stopping Ling Chu. The imperial guards are in trouble because they didn't mean to let Princess Jiashan in. The princess was so evil that they didn't even notice her coming. By the time they saw her, she had already entered the temple. Xiao Nanmu's expression was ruthless and his eyes were as cold as frost. "Princess Jiashan is so full of lies. Do you think that because you are the daughter of King Dingyuan, His Highness will not dare to punish you?" Ling Chu sneered and wrote. "Why don't you believe it? For the sake of the throne, he would dare to kill his father and brother, so how could he be soft on her, a mere girl? The princess, are not talking nonsense." Just when Yinghua Palace was in trouble, the queen and Princess Rui led a group of ladies and rushed there regardless of their own safety, hoping to rescue the concubine Xian. Unexpectedly, the concubine Xian was not held hostage by the assassin at all, let alone caught in the sea of fire. "Your Majesty, she is sleeping in the dormitory with Deputy Commander Zhao. The concubine Xian is not in danger. Your Highness, you can rest assured, but please don't misidentify your father again." Seeing that Ling Chu seemed to be smiling but not smiling at all, and did not take the second prince seriously at all, Ning Chui was a little unable to hold his forehead. His right hand has just been placed on the long sword at his waist. The second prince over there was so angry that his expression twisted for a moment, and he pulled out the sword of the imperial guard next to him with a swish sound. Just as the sword was swung out, Ning Chui's long sword struck like lightning. Blocked the second prince's killing move. Ling Chu glanced at the two of them and took back the hammer with regret. "On a trip to the capital, I wandered through the gates of many times, and the writings of the second prince were indispensable." She was thinking about getting some interest back, but unfortunately Ning Chui got there first. But it doesn't matter. Before killing the second prince, it's better to let him taste the taste of ruin. "Why, Your Highness, you want to kill people and silence them. Unfortunately, it's too late. I'm not the only one who knows about this. Unless you kill all the officials and women who came to the palace to cry, you can't hide this." The people in the palace did not expect that they would hear the scandal about concubine Xian when they entered the palace to cry. They were listening with interest at first, but it was obvious that the second prince looked at them with a murderous look on his face. Can't help but feel frightened. Does the second prince really want to kill everyone? Ling Chu saw them in a state of shock and uncertainty, and sneered in his heart. The second prince put them under house arrest in the palace in the name of crying souls, in order to threaten their lives so that all officials would have to support his ascension to the throne. She deliberately used concubine and Xian's scandal to remind them that if there were still people who thought the second prince was a bad person, they deserved to die. Seeing that the second prince was furious, Ling Chu didn't think it was enough. He poured another bucket of oil in a cool tone. "Your Highness, Zhao Chuanlin is your father. He has been waiting for you to recognize your ancestor and return to the clan for so many years. It's really pitiful." "Tisk, Second Highness, please don't get angry out of shame. This princess didn't just make up these words. It was Aunt Cao who was beside concubine Xian. She felt that she had been hiding it for so many years and was ashamed to tell the emperor and empress, so she confessed." "If your highness does not believe it, you can ask concubine Xian." The officials in the palace complained in their hearts, wishing they were blind and deaf. They knew the second prince's big secret, but they didn't know if he would silence them. Prince Rui looked very unhappy. Confusing the royal bloodline was not a trivial matter. It's just up to the emperor how to deal with this matter. "Come here, Princess Jiashan has slandered his highness and concubine Xian and ignored the majesty of the heavenly family. This is really disrespectful. People with such evil intentions should be captured and severely punished to serve as a warning to others." Ling Chu sneered, "My princess has bad intentions. I wonder what crime the second highness deserves for using a corpse of unknown origin to impersonate the emperor." The second prince's pupils shrank. She was about to signal the imperial army to kill her. Ling Chu had already flipped his wrist and waved a talisman towards the corpse. The emperor passed away. In order to show his filial piety, the second prince spent a lot of money to invite a group of Taoist priests from Ziun Temple to come over and chant sutras and perform rituals for the emperor. Seeing Ling Chu take action, the leader, Taoist Zhang, quietly made a secret, and in a blink of an eye, a yellow talisman rushed towards Ling Chu's talisman paper. The two talismans collided and ignited a flame. Seeing that his talisman paper was burned to the ground, Ling Chu was not angry. When she saw that the corpse looked exactly like the emperor, she knew that someone must have tampered with it. She typed out the talisman just now in order to deceive the person behind it. Ling Chu smiled coldly, flipped his wrist, and hit the Taoist priest with the small hammer. Being both members of the Taoist sect, Zhang Daozang had naturally heard of several disciples of Master Xianyi. He also carefully inquired about the princess of Dingyuan Palace. When he saw the small hammer coming towards him, he didn't panic and dodged to the side neatly. Outsiders only know that he is good at Xianshu, but they don't know that his martial arts is higher than Xianshu. Seeing that the small hammer fell into the air, Dao Kang Zhang snorted disdainfully. Unexpectedly, a terrifying wind sound suddenly came from behind. His expression changed, and he subconsciously started to use Qinggong. Unexpectedly, as soon as I jumped into the air, a sharp pain suddenly shot through my back. Boom! Taoist Zhang hit the ground hard, with disbelief in his eyes. He clearly avoided the small hammer, so how could he still be hit? Seeing the big shovel pressing down on him, Zhang Daozang's blood surged, and he opened his mouth and vomited a mouthful of blood. "Princess Jiashan, have you made enough trouble? This is the Taoist priest invited by His Highness from Ziun Temple to chant sutras and practices for the emperor. How could you injure this Taoist priest for no reason?" Seeing that the second prince was blocked by Ning Chui, he was unable to make a move against Ling Chu. Kang Anbo immediately yelled at her, dissatisfied. Ling Chu glanced at him sideways. Is it possible that Kang Anbo is deaf and didn't hear Master Ning just say that the corpse was not the emperor? Being insulted by a girl in public, Kang Anbo turned black and said, "That corpse is not the emperor, so tell me who it is." Ling Chu smiled and lowered his eyes to the ground. Who is he? Then you have to ask the Taoist priest. Thanks 1402121840214228. Chen, 641,417. 202211051907439141, De Oscar Red, E, silly and harsh AI, red leaves fluttering. E, prose. BA, Lu 92, why do you grow old? 202211051907439141, fallen leaves no autumn. Ad, China Fuse, Xianbin, white clouds in the sky L. Schwerer, sunshine, freedom like the wine 459. Recommended by book friends such as Shenyi Yang, V, CHLWCH, and XXC. Thanks to the book friends who support Hongxiu. Thanks to the book friends who support Hongxiu. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 477. Chapter 465. Both are dead. Daozang Zhang collapsed on the ground, his face ashen. King Rui frowned. He knew that King Dingyuan's daughter was a disciple of Master Xianyi, so she might be quite capable. But the emperor is the emperor of a country, and he doesn't want him to have peace even if he dies. Princess Jiashan, all the imperial doctors have experienced it, and there is nothing abnormal. I believe that the prince has heard some words, but his ears are empty. But there are some things that may not be true when you see them. The second prince felt nervous. Taoist Zhang was suppressed by the big shovel and could not move. He could only secretly wink at the other Taoist priest. After receiving his hint, Taoist master Ling Xiao flicked his wrist. A thin and long silver needle suddenly shot straight towards the back of Ling Chu's head. Ning Chui's expression changed. Be careful. Ling Chu didn't look back and just waved his hand casually. The small hammer comes last and comes first. He rushed toward the silver needle like lightning. There was only a slight ding sound, followed by the sound of an object falling to the ground. The officials looked at Taoist master Ling Xiao, who fell to the ground and died, and their hearts trembled. Kong Anbo opened his mouth, wanting to scold Ling Chu for being cruel and ruthless, but when his eyes touched the silver needle inserted between Taoist master Ling Xiao's eyebrows, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Ling Chu then slowly turned around and looked at the group of Taoist priests. If anyone else wants to rush to reincarnate, feel free to do it. This princess will definitely not favor one and give you a ride. Ling Chu's words were not serious, and could even be said to be extremely gentle. But no one in the group of Taoist priests from Ziyun Temple dared to make any move. They all cursed in their hearts, what a joke. That small hammer looked inconspicuous, but it was so lethal, and it was still hanging over their heads with eager eyes at this moment. Although they covet the huge profits promised by the second prince, they are not stupid. You, the princess, have put the lesson before your eyes. Who dares to think wrongly? Ling Chu glanced around briefly and saw that they all lowered their heads, then he snorted coldly and walked towards the broken coffin. Hold the secrets with his left hand and hold the talisman with his right hand. In conjunction with the Tiangang steps under his feet, Ling Chu recited the sutra in a low voice. The second prince was furious. He did not expect that the Taoist priests of Ziyun Temple were all a bunch of trash. A murderous look flashed in his eyes, and he was about to signal the imperial army to take action. Ling Chu had already shouted, broken. As the talisman fell, the illusion cast on the corpse was broken, and the majestic face quickly faded away. The dragon robe on his body remained unchanged, but the body turned into a man with an ordinary face. Ah, this is not the emperor. It turns out that the emperor is really not dead. Although all officials are aware of Taoist magic, only few of them have seen it with their own eyes. There were exclamations of exclamation one after another in the hall. Even King Rui, who has always been well informed, was surprised at this moment. Just when everyone was in awe, Taoist Zhang suddenly let out a scream. Looking back, he saw an arrow stuck in his forehead. All the imperial doctors were shocked. They did not expect that Daozang Zhang would be silenced so quickly. The second prince snorted coldly, it must have been this wise old man who tampered with that corpse. He had such ulterior motives. It would be a pity to die. My lord, I'm ashamed. I didn't expect that even my highness would be deceived by that old man. Fortunately, my father is fine. Just in the middle of the second prince's quibbling words, an urgent shout suddenly came from outside the palace, Your Highness, please help your empress. Seeing Zhao Chuanlin rushing in from outside the palace with concubine and Xian in his arms, all the officials were so shocked that their mouths opened wide. Ling Chu was also shocked when he saw concubine and Xian's eyes closed and a hosta stuck on her chest. What happened? Concubine. The second prince saw concubine and Xian's miserable condition and did not care to let the imperial army take action again. He shouted a few times, but when he saw that concubine and Xian didn't respond at all, her face changed. Doctor, please save my mother and concubine quickly. Concubine and Xian is the backer of Kang Anbo mansion, so Kang Anbo naturally does not want anything to happen to her. Hurriedly, a wooden couch was brought over, and Zhao Chuanlin carefully placed concubine and Xian on it. All the imperial doctors were complaining in their hearts, but because of the second prince, they had no choice but to rush forward. Hurriedly checked concubine and Xian's pulse and gave her an injection. But when it came to the hairpin on her body, no one dared to touch it. Seeing that the imperial doctors were helpless, the second prince was angry and anxious, and said in a cold and ruthless tone, If my mother and concubine have any shortcomings, you will all be buried with her. Facing the second prince's explicit order, imperial physician Chen and others dared not speak out in anger. That hairpin is not only deeply pierced, but also located in an extremely dangerous position. Pulling it out, no one can guarantee that concubine and Xian can be saved. But if it is not pulled out, it will still die. Concubine and Xian's situation is very dangerous and she cannot afford to be delayed. Several imperial doctors discussed it and decided to do it together. Physician Chen had the worst expression. Among the imperial doctors, he has the highest medical skills, so he can only pull out the hosta. Physician Chen chose the most suitable place to take action and stood up. The other physicians also stood beside concubine and Xian, holding various medicines and gold needles in their hands. Knowing that the emperor was not dead, King Rui breathed a sigh of relief. Although he was anxious to find out the emperor's whereabouts. It can be seen that concubine and Xian is seriously injured, so it is not easy to ask Ling Chu and Neng Chui at this time. I can only wait with the officials to be treated by the imperial doctor. Physician Chen took a deep breath and quickly pulled out the hosta with the intention of dying. A stream of blood spurted out immediately. The other imperial doctors were busy, trying to stop the bleeding and inserting needles. These imperial doctors were afraid that they could not save concubine and Xian and would be beheaded by the second prince. No one dares to hide their secrets. He tried his best and used all available treatment methods. It's a pity that the hosta was stuck in a vital place. After pulling out the hairpin, concubine and Xian opened her eyes and murmured Muir. The hand loosened and he died. The second prince was so distraught that he knelt down, grabbed concubine and Xian's arm and shouted, Concubine, wake up, wake up. Concubine and Xian died without any reaction. You idiots and quacks, you all deserve to die. The second prince cried a few times, suddenly stood up, pulled out the sword of the imperial guard next to him, and wanted to slash at imperial physician Chen and the others. Prince Rui was still quick-sighted and grabbed his arm to stop the second prince. The imperial doctors have done their best. It is not their fault. Don't kill innocent people indiscriminately. Zhao Chuanlin knelt down on the other side with a face full of pain, ying. Hearing Zhao Chuanlin's words, the second prince stopped and rushed over, grabbing him by the collar and asking, "Who killed my mother and concubine?" Zhao Chuanlin was in a state of despair and did not break free. He allowed the second prince to pull him, raised his eyes and said hoarsely, "It's the queen." The second prince threw Zhao Chuanlin away and gritted his teeth and said, "I'll kill her." Zhao Chuanlin was not angry either. He staggered and said with red eyes, "I have already killed her." The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became stagnant. The second prince paused and turned back to look at Zhao Chuanlin. "The queen is really dead." "That's right, I killed him myself." Ling Chu frowned. She originally thought that Zhao Chuanlin was under her spell and was unable to use martial arts, but she didn't expect that he would dare to kill the queen. It's a pity that in order to deal with the second prince, she didn't pay attention to the system and didn't know what happened. Asking for votes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 478. Chapter 466 Threat. At first, when he heard that an assassin had entered concubine Ancienne's palace and had escaped, the second prince was a little worried, but he never thought that his mother-in-law would die. Because he not only knew that concubine Ancienne had many maids and nuns serving in the palace, but also noticed that Zhao Chuanlin admired his mother. No matter what danger there is, as long as they are here, nothing will happen to his mother and concubine. But now, the second prince is so ruined that his intestines are turning green. If he didn't need Zhao Chuanlin to help him control the power in Kyoto, he would have killed him right now. What happened? Why was my mother-in-law killed by the queen? The second prince really couldn't understand how Zhao Chuanlin could let the queen kill his mother and concubine with his martial arts skills. Zhao Chuanlin closed his eyes in pain. When he opened them, he stared at Ling Chu like a poisonous snake. The reason why he dared to meet concubine Ancienne privately at night was because he knew that the entire palace was under his and concubine Ancienne's control. No one will find out about him and concubine Ancienne. Even if there was, he was confident that no one in the palace would dare to expose it. After all, the lives of those palace maids are in the hands of concubine Ancienne. However, things were completely out of his control. Zhao Chuanlin thought about it. If there was someone who could secretly rescue the queen from the cold palace, sneak into concubine Ancienne's bedroom without anyone noticing, and drug him and concubine Ancienne. Other than the princess of Jiashan, he couldn't think of anyone else who had this ability. There is another reason why Zhao Chuanlin is so sure that it was Ling Chu who did it, and that is Grandma Cao's confession. Just when concubine Ancienne accused the queen of setting them up, Grandma Cao became so stunned that she revealed all her interactions with concubine Ancienne in public. Mama Cao has always been loyal to concubine Ancienne, and her whole family depends on concubine Ancienne and the second prince for their survival. How could she have exposed their affairs if she hadn't found out? The queen knew about the affair between Zhao Chuanlin and concubine Ancienne, so she forced concubine Ancienne to commit suicide in public. Seeing that the second prince was finally about to ascend the throne, concubine Ancienne was naturally unwilling to die. She insisted that she was innocent. It was the queen who was not willing to lose everything, so she framed her and Vice Commander Zhao, and bribed Aunt Cao to slander them. The prince died, the Ministry of War Shangshu Mansion was wiped out, and the queen wanted to kill concubine Ancienne. Seeing that her adultery was exposed, not only did she not admit it, she even blamed her for being the one who framed her. The queen was so angry that she immediately pulled out the hosta from her head and stabbed concubine Ancienne. Although Zhao Chuanlin was hit by the medicine, he was a martial arts practitioner after all, and he recovered faster than concubine Ancienne. Witnessing concubine Ancienne being stabbed, Zhao Chuanlin was so stimulated that he broke free from the oppression of the two palace maids, flew over and beat the queen away. Although he only gave one slap, Zhao Chuanlin used all his strength, and the queen died on the spot. Just thinking that he had waited for so many years and was about to have concubine Ancienne, but was harmed by Princess Jiashan, Zhao Chuanlin wanted to destroy the world. He wants to avenge the woman he loves. Zhao Chuanlin suddenly jumped up, with a ferocious expression on his face, and raised his palm to hit Ling Chu. Ling Chu just saw something wrong in his eyes and had already been on guard. It's just that Ning Chui was one step ahead of her. Zhao Chuanlin was still in the air, and Ning Chui's long sword had already been slashed out. One wants to kill, the other wants to stop. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had passed a dozen moves. Although Zhao Chuanlin's martial arts is not weak, he is still far behind Ning Chui. In addition, in order to save concubine Ancienne, he didn't have time to bring his sword, so he couldn't beat Ning Chui with his bare hands. He kicked him away. Zhao Chuanlin hit the wall and slid to the ground. Just when he was about to jump up, he grabbed the long knife of the forbidden soldier next to him. The phoenix flower on Ling Chu's eyebrows suddenly became hot. The shovel has already knocked Zhao Chuanlin away with lightning speed. Having been seriously injured by Ning Chui, Zhao Chuanlin, even with great martial arts skills, could not withstand Ling Chu's shovel. Miss Han, the Emperor has given you the title of Princess Jiashan, so that you can be a virtuous and kind-hearted lady and do more good deeds. But you are so cruel and ruthless, you really have failed the Emperor's favor. Ling Chu could hardly help but roll his eyes at Kang Anbo in public. It's not like she has a flaw in her head. Zhao Chuanlin hates her so much that he wants to kill her. If she lets him go, wouldn't it be like putting a bomb on herself? The kind that can explode at any time. Uncle, before His Highness said anything, you couldn't wait to jump out. For those who don't know this, they would think that you are the son of Vice Commander Zhao. Kang Amber's face was so angry that he twisted his face. You. Ling Chu snorted coldly and interrupted him rudely. My uncle defends Zhao Chuanlin like this, is he worthy of the earldom the Emperor bestowed on you? Kang Anbo's expression suddenly changed. Seeing the second prince staring at him with a sinister look on his face, his heart suddenly tightened. With the death of concubine Ancienne, Kang Anbo mansion has lost its best supporter. But he couldn't let the second prince dislike him again. Kang Anbo no longer cared about causing trouble for Ling Chu, and handed over to the officials in the palace, everyone. According to urgent reports from the north, the Ora and Tatar tribes have joined forces to invade our border, burning, killing, and looting. The Japanese pirates in the south are also ready to attack Kuiji, Jingde and other places. As the saying goes, a country cannot be without a king for a day, otherwise the country will not be a country. For the sake of our restoration of the Zhao dynasty and the safety of the people in the world, we should establish a new king as soon as possible. Your Highness is wise and mighty, and I invite you to take the throne immediately. Kang Anbo's words touched the second prince's heart. Those officials who were able to act according to the prevailing situation were the most attentive to the situation and immediately started admonishing them one after another. What Kang Anbo said is absolutely true. Your Highness is smart, kind, generous, and virtuous, and is worthy of being our new king. I sincerely request your Highness to ascend the throne immediately, expel foreign enemies, and defeat the Japanese pirates. I sincerely request your Highness to ascend the throne immediately. Prince Rui's face was blue and black. The Emperor was not dead yet, and everyone was about to support the second prince. Kang Anbo knew the current affairs so well, which made the second prince very satisfied. Although he wished he could put on the dragon robe and sit on the dragon chair right away. But in order to avoid criticism, the second prince still planned to say a righteous rejection to let all officials know that he had no intention of ascending the throne. Unexpectedly, before he could speak, Yashima, who claimed to be a direct minister, suddenly strode out and angrily scolded the second prince. Your Highness, the Emperor's life and death are unknown, and his whereabouts are unknown. You don't want to send people to find the Emperor as soon as possible. Instead, You want to usurp the throne while the emperor is not in Kyoto. You are so unfaithful and unfilial, how can you be worthy of the new king? The second prince looked grim. The next to him suddenly smiled and said, I have always heard that Ma Yashi is very filial, but I wonder if the emergency of Mrs. Yashi mansion can be cured. A few days ago, Mr. Ma fell off his horse and broke his leg. Has his injury improved now? Ma Yashi's face turned pale. He knew that the eunuch's words were threatening him. His mother's emergency illness and his son's broken leg both relied on imperial doctors to treat them. They warned him again that if he opposed the second prince's ascension to the throne again, his mother and son might not only not be able to be cured, but their lives would be in danger. I made a fortune by raiding houses in ancient times. Author, Half-Life Calligraphy. Chapter 479. Chapter 467 Killing the Chicken to Scare the Monkey. Ma Yashi is an upright person with a straightforward temperament, but he is indeed a very filial person to his parents. Hearing Eunuch Liu's threatening words, Ma Yashi's face turned ugly, but he was afraid of the second prince's methods and had to keep silent. Seeing that Yashi Ma did not dare to speak again, the officials of the second prince's faction began to persuade the second prince to ascend the throne. What nonsense, there are no 2 days in the sky, no 2 kings in the land, no 2 kings in the country, and no 2 honorable men in the family, so you can rule them all with one. Your Majesty's whereabouts are unknown and you are not dead yet. How can you appoint His Highness as your king instead? The second prince was secretly happy when he saw that no one dared to oppose him. But now, looking at the upright and eloquent official, the evil in his eyes is even stronger than before. The official who spoke this time was also a censor, surnamed Hu. Although Ma Yashi is upright, he still has some scruples when it comes to life-threatening matters. But Hu Yashi was a headache even for the emperor. Not only is he upright and straightforward in his speech, he is also quick to give advice. When Hu Yashi opened his mouth, he first quoted a lot of scriptures, but he was also worried that he was too euphemistic and others would not fully understand his meaning. He then used the most straightforward language and impassionedly scolded the officials who had persuaded the second prince to ascend the throne. The second prince's face was gloomy, and he secretly winked at a forbidden soldier. The other party quietly stepped away. Not long after, a palace maid hurried into the hall, panting and saying, Hu Yashi, Mrs. who just got an emergency, and she is already dead. Hu Yashi's expression changed, and he subconsciously blurted out, how could it be possible? My wife has always been in good health, how could it be possible? Before he finished his sentence, Hu Yashi suddenly understood when he saw the eyes of the palace maid in front of him flickering. His wife did not suffer from any emergency. She was opposed to the second prince's ascension to the throne, and was used by the second prince to scare the monkeys. Anyone who can climb down in the officialdom is not stupid. After listening to Hu Yashi's words and the reaction of the palace maid, the officials in the palace didn't understand anything. Beside the second prince snorted and said casually, Mrs. who is in good health. It seems that Mrs. who is suffering from an emergency. It is because she was exhausted by the ministers of the Yashi mansion. Seeing that Hu Yashi's face was pale, the snorted again and turned to the officials, ministers, the bodies and bones of women are weak. You should be more careful and don't follow in Hu Yashi's footsteps. Eunuch Lu obviously meant well to persuade, but every word he spoke was a threat. Officials who supported the second prince's ascension to the throne secretly breathed a sigh of relief, thankful that they had chosen the right side. Those officials who did not persuade the second prince to ascend the throne first felt chilled in their hearts, and soon began to feel uneasy again. Those ladies followed Princess Rui to concubine Xian's palace to rescue people. I haven't seen you back for such a long time, and I don't know what's going on. Thinking of the dead Mrs. Hu, everyone's expressions became worse and worse. Ling Chu was also worried about Princess Ding Yuan, so he thought about it and opened the system. Yashi Hu's expression over there changed several times. Suddenly he straightened his back and sternly cursed at the second prince. Before anyone could react, he slammed into the pillar next to him with a decisive gesture. Ling Chu was using the system to scan when he heard the exclamation and turned his head hurriedly, just about to let the big shovel step forward to stop Huyashi. Ning Chui had already flown forward and grabbed Huyashi's arm. Although he was fast, Huyashi was determined to make the second prince bear the world's infamy at the cost of his own life. He used all his strength in this collision. Although he was stopped by Ning Chui, he was not killed. But the impact was severe and he passed out. Prince Rui's face was gloomy, but he still held back his anger when he thought that Princess Rui was back after a long absence. "Mr. Chen, please go quickly and treat Huyashi." He turned to other officials and said, "Since the emperor is still alive, there is no need to continue crying." Everyone has dispersed and gone back to his residence to rest. Although Huyashi was straightforward, he was loyal. Physician Chen wanted to save him, but it was obvious that Eunuch Lu looked at him with murderous intent. His face was pale, his head lowered, and he stood still. When other imperial doctors thought about Mrs. Hu's fate, they were as if they were deaf and could not hear what King Rui said. No imperial doctor dared to treat Huyashi. Some officials wanted to take the opportunity to leave, but the imperial guards armed with bows and arrows blocked the exit of the hall expressionlessly. The second prince said nothing, folded his hands, glanced around casually, and slowly looked at Kang Anbo. Kang Anbo felt a chill in his heart. Swallowed his saliva and forced himself to speak. "Your Majesty, if the emperor was fine, he would have returned to the capital long ago. Now, I'm afraid it's going to be very bad. Now not only the Wasi and Tatars from the north are pressing forward step by step, but other foreign tribes are also watching with eager eyes. The Japanese pirates in the south took advantage of the chaos to attack and kill everyone. I believe that His Highness should be enthroned immediately to stabilize the people's hearts." Then I ordered the generals to lead their troops to destroy the Japanese pirates and kill the foreigners, so that our territory can be preserved. Otherwise, the Chongzhou dynasty will be in danger. The emperor is not dead. He must clean the court after returning to Beijing. Officials in the second prince's faction all knew that if they did not want to die, they had no choice but to support the second prince on the throne. This is their only chance. Kang Anbo spoke, and the officials who supported the second prince also rushed to express their opinions. Although King Rui was worried about Princess Rui, he still resisted the pressure and refuted the officials' proposals. Ling Chu withdrew his eyes from the system, secretly attached an invisibility charm to the little hammer, and let it slip out quietly through the gap surrounded by the forbidden army. Then he walked up to Prince Rui and said quietly to the officials who supported the second prince's ascension to the throne, "You all keep saying that you want to restore the Zhao dynasty, but even a weak woman like me knows the consequences of one country and two kings. Are you really doing this for the sake of the people and the country?" Although Ling Chu spoke softly, he placed the shovel in front of him in a grand manner. Ning Chui didn't talk much, and he didn't speak at this moment. He just stood on the other side of King Rui while holding the long sword in his hand with no expression on his face. King Rui breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the two men's actions. "Fortunately, I am not alone." Ma Yishi glanced at the second prince, who had a blue and black face, and then at Prince Rui, whose back was straight. He hesitated for a while, then slowly raised his feet and walked to Ning Chui's side. Those officials who had not spoken to let the second prince ascend the throne looked at each other for a while. Gritting his teeth, he also stood behind King Rui and others. As they stood in line, the officials in the hall were divided into two groups. The two sides are clearly divided. The second prince's eyes slowly swept over Prince Rui and Ning Chui, and his right hand suddenly raised high. Just as he was about to speak, a forbidden soldier suddenly rushed in from outside the palace, walked quickly to the second prince, and whispered in his ear. The second prince's expression suddenly changed, he suddenly turned his head and shouted at the imperial guards, Do it? The one who spoke at the same time as him was Ling Chu. Those officials who were on Prince Rui's side were uneasy. When they heard Princess Jiashan shouting "do it" at the same time, their eyes widened in shock. Seeing the imperial guards begin to draw their bows and draw arrows, their expressions changed drastically. The second prince was initially puzzled as to why Ling Chu also called for action, but when he saw the royal guards suddenly appearing outside the palace, their expressions were visibly full of murderous intent. Thanks to China Fuse, XXC, Housekeeping Cleaner Lu 1376 771 7289, Sankai. DB, Crystal at Diamond, 1402121840214228, Chen, Wuhu Dash, Walasali, Moran Karad. Dash, Wabk. 123, Shen Yang, Goat Song and the Story of Eyes, Scar Red, Scarred, Curcuma, Stupid and Harsh, All Living Beings, .v, Red Leaves Fluttering. E, Prose. BA, 1402121840214228, Lalang Zixi, 201706161940236220, Ni Shang 916, Xianbin, E550, Why We Grow Old, Happy Baby, China Fuse, Housekeeping Cleaner Lu 1376 771 7289, XXC, Panax Noto Ginseng. DB, Prose. BA, 641417, Morning Glory Under the Scorching Sun, Chen, 41228, Red Leaves Fluttering. E, Fallen Leaves No Autumn. Ad, Scar Red, The Song of the Goat and the Story of the Eyes, I, Silly and Harsh AI, 9902, Silent Blessings, All Living Beings, CHLWCH, .v, Lalang Zixi, Sankai. DB, Lu 92, Why We Grow Old, supported by recommendation votes from book friends such as Ixixi, Xiong Bin, Zuchinja's mother, Tao Yao, EB, etc. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu. Thanks to the book friends who support Hungziu.